Welcome to the Real Stories channel. Come discover amazing stories. And the teacher is already tired of giving warnings to the student's mother, and as a result, she became irritated with him. She threatened that if he didn't come to school with his mother the next day, she would kick him out of class. Mariano ran to the cemetery and wept with resentment. He was bullied by his peers because of his appearance when he arrived at school dirty and in ripped pants. The boy was only 8 years old and tried to wash his clothes, but there was no soap, washing powder or water in the house. But how did the boy get to this point, and where was his mother? His mother's name was Maria. At 17, she was orphaned and went to the city alone to live as best she could. She worked small part-time jobs, slept on the streets and starved until one day a woman noticed her on the side of the road. When this woman heard her sad story, she sympathized and promised to give her a job in her big house. She gave a small room in the basement. The woman was named Nicole and was shocked by the girl's story, as she herself was once poor and had to work hard to earn money. When Maria started working in that house, the woman realized that she had made the right decision in hiring her. Maria was very organized and cooked well. Only Nicole and her husband lived in the house, as the children were already adults. The eldest son lived with the family in another city, and his youngest son studied abroad. Everything went well for almost 2 years, and Nicole even offered to buy the small house that Maria left with her husband when they were young. Maria gladly agreed and moved into this house. A year and a half later, the house payments were 80% of her salary, but she was incredibly happy because she was working and could eat for free and do her laundry. In general, she had no expenses to spend the money on. The girl managed to save, despite her small income. 2 years after Maria started working in that house, the son of the housewife came back, and when he saw the girl, he was impressed by her beauty. Maria was a very beautiful young woman, and that caught Joao's attention. But unfortunately, his intentions weren't noble at all. He just wanted to have fun. Joao was too arrogant to be serious, but even so, he took an interest in the poor maid, even though he was already engaged to the daughter of an influential deputy. Joao started dating Maria, who was 7 years younger, and secretly they met. It seemed that the poor girl's dream came true. She fell in love without a second thought and jumped headlong into the relationship. After 3 years, Mary became pregnant with John, and at that time, he was silent but secretly preparing for the wedding. The girl confessed to Nicole what was going on between her and the housewife's son, and she promised to help her, but she immediately told Maria the truth. She said that Joao would marry the congressman's daughter and not her. Maria became depressed again and felt miserable. But what happened next shocked her even more. One night, a mobster broke into her house and demanded that she forget about Joao. He ordered Maria not to interfere in his life and told the girl to sell the house as soon as possible and go somewhere else, otherwise she would find people who would not let her live normally. "You've lasted long enough with our family, so go back to your village," said the enraged man. Scared, Maria followed her orders and in a few weeks, sold the house and moved to another city. Nicole looked for the girl, but did not find her for 5 months. Pregnant, Maria opened a small stand where she sold vegetables, and things went well. For her, the house she acquired was small, but very spacious for her and the baby. She lived alone, and no one took her to the hospital or visited her after a difficult delivery. Even so, the girl was happy because the child was born healthy and had a roof over her head. The boy grew up while Maria worked and was cared for by her friend and neighbor Kaina. They became friends when she moved to her new location. When the boy was a year old, Maria began to take him to work with her. She also got Kaina a job working at her vegetable stand, and indeed, the boy was almost always under the supervision of 2 mothers. A few months later, Kaina's fiancé, who worked at the local bank, visited Maria and allowed her to open a savings account to guarantee her son's future, and it seemed like a great idea. Maria started saving money and giving it to Kaina's fiancé so he could put it in a savings account. At the age of 6, little Mariano started attending a private school which was very expensive, but Maria did her best to give her son the best education. Her business became very successful. The young woman already had several outlets in the city, and Kaina's fiancé began to work as a manager for her. Mariano did well in school, but was not considered one of them, despite Maria's best efforts, and many parents were against having a merchant's son study with their rich children. But the teacher who taught Mariano was a very kind woman. When she discovered that Maria was a single mother who worked tirelessly to provide her son with an education, she decided to help him and ensure that the boy did not receive a tuition discount. As a very promising student, Maria started saving even more money for her son's future. However, 6 months later, she fell ill and was unable to get out of bed. Maria's friend began to take care of her and the child. The girl had to deal with business, and Mariano was taken to school while the doctors were unable to understand the cause of the woman's illness. She suffered from severe headaches, and her son cried as he watched his mother suffer. Kaina's fiancé convinced Maria to sign a power of attorney to manage the accounts and business on her own, under the pretext of making the job easier and not to bother Maria. Again, she nodded. A few months later, the poor woman died, and the cause of her illness was never discovered. Kaina told Mariano that her mother was sleeping and that they took her somewhere quiet where she could rest forever. The next day, the woman was buried and the boy was crying desperately. The girl who helped take care of Mariano said he didn't need to be sad because his mother was sleeping. A week later, the boy woke up alone at home. Kaina was nowhere to be seen, and the girl who helped take care of Mariano disappeared, taking almost everything from the house. The only room that didn't lack anything was the boy's room. He also found a note in the kitchen: "Dear Mariano, I had to move to another city for a month because of your mother's business. Don't worry, but I'll be back. Don't tell anyone that you live in a house alone, otherwise you will be taken to an orphanage." When Mariano read the note, he brightened, but his hopes began to dim when a month passed and no one came to pick him up. He had no one else to take him to school, and as a result, he began to be constantly late, which made the teacher very angry. She tested the boy, but he didn't live up to her expectations. When Mariano arrived at school, he was always late, and, on one occasion, the teacher sent a message to the mother asking her to take her son. Although Mariano continued to study well, he got a little distracted when the teacher called him to the blackboard and scolded him in front of everyone, saying he didn't take care of himself. But the teacher didn't know that there was no electricity or water in the house where Mariano lived, because there was no money to pay for public services. He fetched water from the neighbor's garden and looked for food in the garbage. The teacher began to constantly write comments in the boy's diary for the mother to see, but as she never responded, she angered the woman even more. When it came time for the school's exhibition, Mariano couldn't submit his project because he didn't have the money for the necessary materials. The teacher said, "Again you let us down. I don't need such a dirty and lazy student in my school." She grabbed his hand and led him out of the classroom and also wrote in her notebook, "Please, if you don't show up for school tomorrow, don't send your son here again. It's unacceptable how Mariano comes to school." School. The boy was depressed and ran out of the school in tears towards the cemetery, screaming at his mother that he had died. "You've had enough rest. You better go talk to the teacher. I won't be home." The cemetery caretaker heard the boy's screams and cries and called the police. When the teacher found out about the incident, she called the police, who went to the boy and fell to his knees in front of him, asking for forgiveness. Poor Mariano stood in front of him and couldn't stop crying, because he already understood that his mother would never come back. Journalists found Moriel's story and did a story about it all. The police launched an investigation. Kaina and her fiancé stole money from Maria's business. The police also found that they poisoned a poor woman on purpose. And her death was not an accident. The criminal couple received a severe sentence. Mariano's fate was quickly determined. After everything that happened, Mariano's teacher decided to adopt the boy. From then on, the love and affection that he did not receive after his mother's death was applied. But that is not all. After she was already elderly, Nicole heard a rumor about this story. She also saw a picture of the boy on TV. Her attention was drawn to how much he resembled her son as a child. She visited Mariano and had no doubts that the boy was her grandson from Bahia. He continues to live with his adoptive mother. His grandmother took care of his future so that he didn't need anything. The boy's father, João, never talked to his son. The lady never got mad about it. Because just as she wanted to do everything for Mariano to grow up well, she had been disappointed with her son for a long time, and she wanted to do everything for Mariano to grow up as a different person. That's all, my friends. Thanks for watching and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories.